When you look in the mirror, do you love who and like what you see? Do you doubt privately, or do you know confidently that you're worthy? The answer to that question, ladies and gentlemen, will often define what you'll do, how you'll feel, and the extent to which you'll have what I think is extremely important, the courage to choose you. I've spent most of my professional life as an investor, managing billions of dollars at a global investment management firm. And I spent most of my personal life as a mother, raising 3 wonderful children, mostly as a single mom, navigating the pulls and the demands of work and life. And I've had my own highs and my own lows, both in markets and in life. And I found these amazing, powerful parallels between 2 seemingly unrelated worlds. And my grandmother, I was very close to her, Rose Mosley. She was a fountain of unconditional spiritual love. And she used to lean close and tell me that I was very blessed and I was meant to share with the world what I knew. She died 1 month before she turned 100, and I lived with her for a while, and so I'm channeling her today. And as I tell you, how can you create your own outperforming portfolio in life? How do you build your self-worth and grow your net worth using strategies that I learned from managing money well that apply to managing life well? So when I was an investor, the first thing that I had to do when I met my client, this is very, very important, is to ask and to be clear on what's the objective. When you're managing money, the issue is against what will you be compared? That's your benchmark. And when you're managing life, you want to ask, what is your vision? Not your mother's, not your sister's, not your loved ones, but what do you want? And importantly, how do you measure it? What does it look like? And the reason this is important is because what you focus on affects how you feel. And many of us, as you might know, look at the models and the mannequins that are size 2, and we compare ourselves against that. That is not the norm. Particularly in the United States, the average woman's size is 12 to 14. So if you're a size 8 and you're comparing yourself to a model 2, you're going to feel badly, and it affects what you do. The second thing you want to make sure that you do when you're managing money, and one of the things I loved about it most is that I could take what I thought was going to happen in the market. What do I think? And then I'm going to make choices along the way. My objective is to beat an index. That's what I'm going to be compared against, right? And one of the things that I love most about that is that the buck stops with me, both when managing money and managing life, right? And when you're looking, I get opinions from everyone on the street, and I had opinions inside about what? What's happening with the economy? What's going on with company earnings, profits? Are interest rates going up or are they going down? But I had to take the data, take people's thoughts, and come up with my own. And based on that, I was going to put a portfolio together. And what I loved is that analysts and economists would say what they thought in the context of what everybody else thought. I'm above consensus. So they paid attention to what others thought, but they were not defined by that. And we should learn something from that. You know why? 81% of women have said that how they feel about themselves is a function of what a loved one said about their bodies. They gave that power over to someone else. And what I love about portfolio management is that it's what you think and what you do that determines your performance, and the same is true in life. After you have your view, you have this upside-down funnel that most investors use. And what we do is we take the universe of opportunities, say there are 2,000, and you're going to screen out what you don't want, and you have 500, because it's what you keep out of your portfolio that's going to add value, both when managing money and managing life. You know those emotional ticks? You want to make sure that you keep them out of there. And if I didn't own Lehman Brothers as an investor, I would have had top portfolio, because Lehman was the company that went bankrupt at the beginning of the financial crisis. So keeping that out added value, because it's a way of managing risk. Does that make sense? Okay. The fourth thing, I told you 3 so far, the other thing that you want to make sure that you do is that you select in items that are in alignment with your goals. So we can go over that really quickly, right? You keep out what doesn't work. You select in what does, because that's going to add value to your portfolio. And then you want to monitor it. So you go from 2,000 down to 100. And I want to tell you that I did this analysis really well personally, because when I was deciding what did I want to do in life, I knew I had two goals. Success for me was being able to have dinner with my children. And I wanted to make sure that I did well financially, because I grew up in inner city Philly, and I saw what happens when you don't have financial resources. Those were my two goals. So I was able to screen out jobs that kept me traveling constantly. Makes sense. And I selected in a wonderful career of managing money. Why? Because the markets closed at 5 o'clock, and I got a chance to go home. And afterwards, the kids are in bed, I could read. And I think you can do that. You are, after all, a combination of your choices. When the crashes happen, things that happen outside of your control. And in 1987, I started, there was this huge crash. There was so much panic. People were afraid. Folks were killing themselves. It was horrible. It was the worst decline in history since the Depression. And then you look back over time, and it's a mere blip. And sometimes we have our own crashes, and they seem really huge in the moment, but over time, it's just a blip. And we have crashes, and you see recently, this is showing the S&P equity markets. It's gone up quite a bit. So ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have a crash in the not-too-distant future. Just prepare for it. But don't be afraid by it, because all that means is that the market's on sale. And if you have the time, you don't care that it crashes, believe it or not, because in the United States, most crashes return. In fact, every single crash we've had has been met with a return. And you can look at some of the numbers here. So in the most recent crash, we were down 31% in the 87, 39% during Lehman, but look at the numbers afterwards. After the crisis, there was almost a 50% return. So had you run and gotten away from that investment at that time because you were afraid, you would have missed out. That is true when you're managing money, and it's true in managing life. My personal crash happened when I was about 11. Because we all have things. When crashes happen, they happen when they're outside of your control. So my grandfather used to tell me all the time that he loved me, and he loved me, he loved me. And then he proceeded to abuse me. And the duration of my crash was for about 4 years. And I kept it in, and I hid. I didn't tell my mother about this. This was my mother's stepfather until I was 34, pregnant with my youngest child. Because you feel ashamed, you feel embarrassed, and you want to hide. And the thoughts that you have affect what you'll do. So I didn't have the ability to say no to people that came in my life because I wanted to please. I got into the habit of pleasing my grandfather and appeasing him. And suddenly what he thought and what he believed and what he wanted took power over what I wanted. And I'm so happy to hear and see the number of women and men. Often we think about women and men that have been abused at the hands of priests and other people that are above them, and coaches, and men in entertainment and technology. It's painful. But like with the markets, when we have our own crashes, it could be a divorce, 50%. Your own divorce or somebody else leaves. It can be rejection. When it happens, the most important thing that we can do is to invest in ourselves. And what I learned is the power of loving you. And if I could tell you just one thing about managing money that also applies to managing life, it is this simple math formula. It's called the power of compounding. And I want to make sure that everyone in here and everyone in the world understands it. That is, if you take an amount of money, it's a 4-factor formula. If you know 3 items, you can just figure out the 4th. You take the amount of money that you invest, the amount of time that you have, and the rate of return that you can get really very attractive returns. And this is true if you put the money in, and it's true when you put the love in. So what I had to do is spend time in the mirror. I started off talking about the mirror. I had to spend time looking at that mirror and looking at the little girl inside of me that was harmed, that was hurt, and that felt less than. And it took a while for me to say, and I had to say, you are worthy. And I want to say to the many people that have had their own crashes, you are not what happened to you. And I am not what happened to me. Instead, we are what we believe and what we choose to do. So if you understand the power of compounding, you can see what happens if you choose to do this. So I want you to take a look, and I'm just going to share what would happen if you were 22 and you were able to, you finish school, you get your first job, and you don't spend all of the money on things that you don't need, and you invested some of it. It's pretty amazing what would happen. You just take a look at the graph, and I believe it should be showing. Starting at 22, $250, it's about $8 a day. $8 a day. And not everybody can get this. I understand. But if you try, over time, you would have $1.1 million by the time you retire. And this is really important. That orange bar, ladies and gentlemen, is free money. It's because you're taking the interest that gets interest, and it grows. That's free money. The white is what you would have gotten if you just saved it. And it would have been left if you just saved it because of the inflation. And if $250, you say that's a lot of money. If you only did $100 a month, only $100 a month, and you did it consistently, you would have close to $500,000, $500,000. And ladies and gentlemen, in the United States, the median net worth of all families is $80,000. So, and if you take out the house and only look at the assets, it's $25,000. So you would have 20x if you had the time and you started when you were young. It's not too late. Get started. Do it today. And this also applies with the love. So I'd say go back to the mirror, spend the time, know that you are not your experiences, and invest in you. And I invested in me. I was a single mom. I had 3 kids. I'm managing billions. And I made the decision to do what brought me joy. And it's counterintuitive, right? So you want to run, and the very time that you want to run, you've got to dig down. And I did that, and it got to the point where my kids were like, Mom, why don't you go work out? Because they could see the difference of what happens. And I want to encourage you to invest in you every day, just as consistently as I'm asking you to invest with the net worth. And if you believe in this, and you understand it, join in the effort with me because I'm committed to it. I want to help people build the self-worth and the net worth. And just join in. Let me know, because we can do this, because we can talk to other people. And when you have these things happen, you feel like you're alone, and you aren't. Have the courage to invest in and to choose you. And investing in you, ladies and gentlemen, is not selfish. It's bona fide leadership. Thank you.